As with all of our presentations here at Royal Roads University, we'd like to begin by acknowledging that we live, learn, and work on the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen families. There has been a long history of teaching, learning, and gathering on these lands, and it's with great gratitude that we are a part of that now. So we're all here today to explore, or to go under the wrapping, to explore what a graduate degree in learning and technology or higher education administration leadership can present you. So my name is Selena Kunar, and I'm an education advisor here at Royal Roads University. And I am so excited to dive into this dialogue with our wonderful program heads and alumni, as well as soon to be alumni, to explore what indeed these graduate programs are able to provide us. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Tamara Leary, who is the program head of the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration and Leadership program, also known as MAHEAL, and Dr. Elizabeth Childs, who is the program head of the Master of Arts in Learning and Technology, also known as our LAT program, join us today. We've given you a quick sneak peek at who we are and who we'll be chatting today, and we'd love to get a sneak peek at who we're talking with today. So if you feel comfortable, head back down to that black bar, open up your chat box, and let us know, where are you joining us from? What are you interested in learning about today? And anything else you'd like to share. It's always wonderful for us to get an idea of who's with us in the room to make sure that what we're sharing is helpful to all of you. So I'll check back at the chat box shortly. And in the meantime, highlight how we're going to spend the rest of our time together this afternoon. So next, we'll turn the microphone over to Tamara and Elizabeth to give us some context on, okay, what are the HEAL and LAT programs here at Royal Roads University? And then we'll shift over and open up the floor to our wonderful alumni and soon to be alumni. So we have a slew of wonderful folks joining us. We have Brad, Christy, Laura, Sean, and Steve, who will all meet shortly, and we'll get to explore why they chose the program that they did. What was something impactful about their experience? And how has their program and their learning and this credential supported their professional development? And then, of course, any questions that come up for all of you in our chat box as well. So we'll leave time for the questions and conversations at the end of our session today. So I'll turn my attention to my second monitor and take a peek at who's in the chat box. So we have Ariadna from RRU. Welcome, Ariadna. We have Tim joining us from Milton, Ontario. Easter B from Alberta. Christy joining us from White Rock. Trinity, local to Victoria, who works for Starfish Medical and Administration, and looking ahead to the next 5 years or so for a career option that would allow me to work remotely and travel once my kid is off on his own. Not sure if this applies to instructional design, but am curious. Well, you are in the right place to be asking that question. Welcome, Trinity. We have Galia from Halifax, Paula zooming in from Calgary, hoping to learn what the LAT program expects from its applicants and what could potentially expect if we attend or apply for the program. We have the right people in the room to tell you about what the experience moving through the LAT program is like. We have Terry joining from Calgary, who has a course-based master's and interested in a thesis journey, interested in the articulation between graduate diplomas to degrees. Lori from Southern Ontario, wondering what opportunities this type of degree will open for me. Sophia from Vancouver and Christy from Vancouver as well. Well, please continue popping those introductions in the chat box. I encourage everyone to continually peek into our chat box, get to know everyone who's online, and also use the space to ask questions as they come up for you. Again, we'll be answering questions toward the end of the session, but we really recommend popping them in as they come up, and maybe our alumni will be able to speak to them as we go. And speaking of as we go, I will pass the microphone over to Tamara.
Thank you very much, Selena, and welcome everyone. Thank you so very much for your interest in Royal Roads and specifically, your interest in either the MALAT program or the MHEAL program. And heartfelt thanks to our alum who have offered to come and share their experiences today. So thank you very, very much. Just to give you a quick overview of what we refer to as the HEAL, or Higher Education Administration and Leadership suite of programs. The 2-year Master of Arts is kind of like the mothership, if you will, and the other programs are contained within it. So the Masters of Arts is a 2-year blended program. It has a on-campus residency at the beginning in July. It's a 2-week residency, and it also has a 3-day residency in its very last course, which you can attend virtually or on campus. All of the other courses, all of the other 10 courses are completed online. Within that 2-year period, students who perhaps aren't ready to make that full commitment to the master's, we have a graduate diploma in higher education admin and leadership, and that's comprised of essentially the first year of your coursework of the master's program. And one of the things to keep in mind, because I know, having come from a more traditional university before I joined Royal Roads, we don't have the traditional semester term structure here at Royal Roads. So when I talk about a master's program being delivered in 2 years, or the diploma being comprised of the courses that are contained in the first year, it's not what you might assume in terms of a September to December, January to April, May to June type of semester breakdown. Instead, here at Royal Roads in these programs, we offer our courses, which are about 9 weeks in duration, and then you have a 3 to 5 day break, and then you're right into the other course. So you're going full steam ahead, and that's how we're able to help you get through a 2-year master's program in 2 years, as opposed to other universities, more traditional, where it might take longer than that. So when I say it's comprised of the first year of courses, it's give or take a few months, but it would be the first 6 courses, of which each course is 9 weeks, separated by about, like I said, a 3 or 5 day break. Also embedded in the suite of programs are 3 graduate certificates. Each of the graduate certificates are comprised of 3 of our courses, so 3 9-week consecutive courses. And they vary, obviously, depending on the stream. And for anybody that's looking for more information of a detailed breakdown about the grad cert or the master's, happy to provide that information. We can have a follow-up conversation, or I know that we also have a number of our webinars that are recorded and you would be able to listen to. So the 3 grad certs are broken down according to their interest. First one there that you see, the business development and international education. These 3 courses focus specifically at looking at higher education through a global lens, a more business development within an international context. So it attracts a lot of folks that are currently working in international higher education, international student recruitment, marketing, research partnerships, that sort of thing. The graduate certificate in systems leadership is comprised of 3 courses designed specifically to develop skills and knowledge in systems thinking and the application of systems thinking as a leader or as an administrator in a university or college. And the last and the newest is the graduate certificate in strategic enrollment. Currently, that course is comprised of 1 of our Masters of Arts course, the Systems Thinking course, and then 2 other courses that right now stand outside of the Masters of the MHEAL program, 2 courses that are specifically designed to develop skills and knowledge around strategic enrollment management theory, and the second course looks at its application. So just in a very quick nutshell, because I know we want to get to our alum and their experiences and perspectives, that's essentially what one might expect in looking at any one of the courses or any one of the programs that fall under our higher education admin and leadership. Is that enough, Selena, for now, or? Okay.
That was perfect. Thanks so much, Tamara.
Sure.
And now we'll pass the microphone over to Elizabeth to talk about the Learning and Technology Suite.
Thanks, Selena, and thanks everyone for making time for this. I know, especially in December, especially given what we're all experiencing right now, that finding windows of time to actually be part of a webinar and engage in a meaningful way is hard. So thank you very much for making time for it or for listening to the recording afterwards. I'll just speak quickly to the Masters of Arts in Learning and Technology. Similarly to the Michiel program that Tamara outlined, there is a graduate diploma that comprises the first equivalent of a year of the master's program. You'll notice there's also a graduate certificate in instructional design that can ladder into a diploma in technology enhanced learning design, which some of those courses can be taken forward, and if you want to keep going, be pulled forward into your master's program. A few things just about the Masters of Learning and Technology program. It has three main design principles. It went under a redesign in 2015 was the program evaluation and review, but 2017 was the launch of the redesigned program. And so it's built on principles of openness, open educational practices, networked learning, and development of a digital mindset. And as a result of that, the entire program course suite is not in an LMS. We use the LMS, the Learning Management System, as a companion site, but you can see all of the program courses, the assignments, the rubrics, the descriptions. You can see current students' blogs, which I encourage you to go check out because they're really wonderful. On that link there, and I'll pop it in the chat later so it's easy for you to grab too. And you can also jump into the Twitter hashtag that is used not by everybody, but by a large number of current students and alumni. And it'll give you a sense of the kind of things that are talked about and profiled in the program. One thing I would also draw your attention to if you're thinking about Royal Roads is the learning, teaching, and research model. So as Tamara mentioned, one of the differentiators is and how we can support you in achieving a master's in 2 years is to take one course at a time, by and large, for 9 weeks with 1 week in between. So not a semesters-based system. The other thing that also underpins our programs is an institutional approach to learning, teaching, and research. So sort of the belief set, some would call it a signature pedagogy, of what underpins what Royal Roads believes and takes up in their different programs around learning, teaching, and research. So that's a really useful document. And again, I'll put that link in the chat as well, because it gives you a sense of where this institution in general is approaching those three areas, which as a prospective student is really helpful as you get into your courses, because you see how it's then taken up in the courses in authentic assessment activities, real application of the learning into your context, and a real valuing of the prior learning and experience and expertise that you bring to the conversation. So I think I'll stop there for now. I'll drop some of these links in the chat as we're going, but I think we should really just turn it over to these wonderful people that have actually graduated from these programs to talk about it. So Tamara, if you don't mind, I'll just keep going and start by introducing Christy. So Christy Boyce, who is yes, that way. I got my rights and my lefts correct. Has worked as a critical care respiratory therapist for 16 years and spent 4 years as an instructor in various healthcare simulation training courses. As she shifted into community care, teaching patients how to manage their chronic illness, she recognized a desire to engage in graduate studies and joined our LAT program. 6 months later, she joined the virtual health team at Fraser Health, first as a project lead, a position that she helped to form, and now as their new virtual health learning consultant. She leads the educational strategy of Fraser Health and clinical support and practice support for BC's largest health authority as they transition into the use of virtual care, and supporting virtual visits and clinicians to begin facilitating online patient education. So that is Christy, who we have with us. And Tamara, if you'd like to introduce Brad, and then we can go back and forth.
I absolutely can do that. Just give me 1 second. I was moving screens around while you were talking. So absolutely thrilled to introduce Brad. Brad holds a BA in economics from the University of Saskatchewan. He also holds an MA in economics from the University of Alberta, and obviously the Michiel designation as well here from Royal Roads University. While at Royal Roads, he was our first student to complete the Michiel program through the thesis stream. And he was probably the first student to complete a video assignment using exclusively hand puppets, which it's a true story. He currently works as an institutional research analyst at Mount Royal University, is a previous presenter at the Canadian Institutional Research and Planning Association Conference, and has had the opportunity to guest lecture at Royal Roads on quantitative methods in a digital world. Outside of the working hours, he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitor and coach, a volunteer with Data for Good YYC, and likes to swing very heavy kettlebells.
That's fabulous. Sorry, I'm with you, navigating too many windows open. I'm going to switch us and introduce Sean Doyle, who is coming to you from Ontario, where there might be a skiff of snow, maybe a little skiff. Sean is a web developer and a professor of web development at Humber College in Ontario, and a 2020 graduate of the LAT program. And Sean makes meaning of the world as a constructivist and implements this perspective as the lens for which he both teaches from as well as investigates. And his master's thesis really looked at taking a new approach to teaching a really rudimentary but fundamental concept in web development called the JavaScript DOM. So with a background in performing arts and a passion for board games, Sean enjoys blending his digital and storytelling skills to create this engaging interactive experiences for his class, and strives to make his class engaging for all of those who are looking to make meaning of the JavaScript. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today.
I will also introduce Laura Levine, who is a graduate of the Michiel program in 2020, so still celebrating being done. Laura has worked in higher education for 12 years in a variety of roles. She currently holds the position of Manager, Business Operations at SAIT in Calgary. And in this role, she oversees a diverse team of 25 staff who are overall responsible for the successful development, delivery, and closeout of corporate training, continuing education, and international projects at SAIT. In addition, she is the mother of 2 children aged 4 and 7. Welcome, Laura, and thank you so much for taking the time to do this today.
Wonderful. Thank you. See, I hope folks that are listening and viewing this can see just the diversity of experience and sectors that are represented in these 2 programs. And that's really one of the extra bonuses of connecting in this way at Royal Roads in these programs. The last person I'm going to introduce is Sean Hackett, who, while working on the front line of healthcare as a paramedic, continued his study as a facilitator, taking roles with Algonquin College and the Ottawa Hospital in clinical instructor roles. Designing and implementing evidence-based processes for competency assessment has given Sean a passion for pedagogy and for performance science. So formally studying at Royal Roads, Sean has become an expert in designing education for performance. He applies his Masters of Learning and Technology at Orange Medical Transport, which is the critical care paramedic provider for Ontario. Sean, thanks for joining us today.
And last but not least, Steve Chase is our 3rd Michiel alum that's joining us today. Steve is a family man, a passionate educator, and a lead learner. He, having been in education since 2007, he has been a classroom teacher, a program coordinator, and a curriculum developer. Currently, Steve is working at the College of New Caledonia in Prince George, BC, as the Acting Associate Dean of Community and Continuing Education. Steve's undergraduate work includes a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Education from the University of Northern British Columbia. And his graduate work includes the MA in Higher Education Administration and Leadership from Royal Roads, the Michiel program. So thank you very much, Steve. I am absolutely thrilled to have all 3 Michiel alum here today. Proud of each one of them and honored to have had the opportunity to work with each of them and learn with and from them as well. So I'm eager to hear what you're going to share.
Wonderful. Well, I think we have gushed so much about these wonderful people. So let's hear right from them. So, as I mentioned in the intro, these are some of the things that we're going to explore in our conversation today. But again, as questions come up for you, how many hours did you spend studying? Why did you pick the thesis that you did? Why did you pick the completion pathway that you did? How have they impacted your work? All those types of questions, pop in the chat box. This is a perfect place to be exploring what you're interested in knowing about the real experience within the program and then after graduation as well. So to kick off, we'll go in alphabetical order. So Brad, I will, I'll pick on you first. But do you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose the program that you did, and perhaps a highlight from your time learning within that program?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I had never really intended to work in higher education as kind of like a career path. So when I applied to the McKeel program, I still had kind of a bad taste in my mouth from having done my previous MA at the University of Alberta, and I had kind of like the zombie look, 1,000-yard stare, having just like gone through the grind. And I was hitting that point where uh, the position I was in was either going to be a job or it was going to be a career. And I felt like I wasn't well equipped to make it into a career. So I decided that I need to have, I need, better education, more relevant education if I want to keep working in higher ed. And the other thing is, after the experience I had at the U of A, I had this idea in my head that like not all graduate programs have to be like that. Like maybe I'm just broken in some way and I'm not equipped to handle the rigors of academia. So I felt like I needed to do another just to know that like the problem wasn't me, the problem had been the way the program was structured. So that's what led me into Mahil. And I'm very, very happy I went into the Mahil program. Like really the highlights of the program. So the instructors were all universally wonderful and helpful. Like I'm now ride or die for Tamara. One of the things which I think the instructors took into consideration, which I didn't really, I can't imagine another institution where this would happen, is there was a lot of consideration given to the people that were in the room. So in the Mahil cohort that I was a part of, we had VPs from different institutions, we had deans, we had chairs, and then we had people who were working in very operational roles, like we had people who were academic advisors, or I believe one person was the secretary to the University Senate. So we had a really diverse group of people in that room. So whenever the instructor would come upon a topic where they realized that, what we have here who is a subject matter expert, we should let them talk about what they know about this. The instructors were pretty universally willing to just give the floor to them and say, hey, look, we've read about this a whole bunch. You live this every day. What do you think about this? I think the diversity in the people who were in my cohort was really important. And a lot of us, we actually came like really close working together so much for 2 years. We still have a Slack channel where we keep in touch with one another. And I guess the other, like, the big highlight, I guess, was I've come out on the other side of this. And I'm like, I'm trying to think how to describe this. I think higher ed research and Canadian post-secondary as a research area is interesting again. Like I want to do more. I keep reading journal articles. In my bio, it's mentioned that I presented at SERPA. I probably would not have presented at SERPA if I hadn't gone to this program. Like even now, I'm still thinking about maybe I actually want to go ahead and do a PhD. That would not have happened 4 years ago. When I came out of my first MA in economics, I graduated, walked across the stage, and said, I am never going back to school ever again for any reason. I had no desire to do anything further. Whereas now, like, I think it's interesting. I'm involved intellectually. I'm still reading a lot of the academic materials. I stay in contact with my classmates. I stay in contact with my thesis supervisor. And like now I'm at the stage where not only am I applying my what I learned in the courses to my professional life, but I'm now looking at pushing my education even further. So I think the program is kind of a win all around for me. I'll stop talking now because otherwise I will chew up this whole hour.
Thanks so much, Brad. Oh, you touched on so many pieces of the Railroads experience, from the faculty and then importantly your cohort as well. I think it's so cool that can so far after graduation you still have those connections. So yeah, we'll swing back to hear more about how the program itself impacted your professional development shortly here. But thanks for sharing. So Christy, did you want to share a little bit about why you picked the Mallet program and some highlights for you?
Sounds good. Yep. Lots of similar themes, I think, between myself and Brad. My career in healthcare, from the moment I was not a student, the next day I was a preceptor for students. And from that moment, I loved teaching in my career. And so it didn't matter where you put me, if I was in the neonatal intensive care unit or doing lung diagnostics, I always leaned into supporting the education of my colleagues or my patients. And so that passion was kind of there for, a master's in some sort of education for years and years. And then I ended up teaching, simulation classes. And that's where I eventually took my thesis research, was into investigating how we created safe learning spaces for neonatal resuscitation program learners. So that was like doctors, midwives, RTs, and nurses. So the reason I chose the Mallet is I'd known another respiratory therapist who had taken it and just spoke the world of it quite a few years prior. And then when I read the course outline, I felt like, okay, this is going to push into where healthcare is going. And that's exactly what happened. I was there, doing coursework, doing research, and started farming out my assignments and the research I'd done for assignments to folks in the corporate groups, particularly the virtual health lead, and got myself an interview. And so, only, 6 months, 8 months into the program, I swapped jobs completely out of clinical patient care right into corporate. I think for me, there was so much that was surprising and meaningful. The fact that I was the only person, our cohort, our initial cohort in the residency, I chose the residency for 2 weeks. There was only 7 of us. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the only one in healthcare. Like, am I going to learn anything? Is this going to be relevant? And it was so incredibly relevant to listen outside of my context and take learnings from outside of my context and say, oh my God, that's so applicable in healthcare. And yet when I brought it over for discussion, it was new or innovative, right? So I think that's really important when you're looking at innovation. You're starting to learn from outside other contexts. And particularly like the leadership courses for me were phenomenal, learning a bit about project management. There was such a wide variety of foundational skills that I immediately took right in and could dive in and learn so fast, and yet contribute to my team in a very thoughtful way. And agree, still reading a lot of, articles and stimulating the brain a little bit too much sometimes with the tasks that we have going in healthcare. But yeah, the Slack channels, still staying connected. It's all very similar to Brad's experience. Yeah, can't say enough. Certainly life-changing.
Amazing, Christy. Thank you. And for highlighting that immediate real world application of your learning. I think that's something that we hear over and over again from our alumni and students, that it isn't just theoretical. It isn't just, okay, I did a reading and I'm going to do a paper about it. You're living it. And it's so cool that you're able to echo that. Thank you. So Laura, did you want to tell us a little bit about how you ended up in your program?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I ended up choosing the Mahil program partly because I'd reached a point in my career in higher education where I started to realize that all of the jobs that I was interested in, or the positions that I was interested in, really did require some kind of a graduate level degree. And so I started to think about it and started to explore different options. I had a few colleagues who had done different master's programs, and actually a couple that had done this program at RRU, and just spoke so highly about it and about their experience. And so that really intrigued me and really is probably the biggest, single factor in why I ended up choosing this program. I was also really interested in taking a master's degree that was directly relevant to the work that I was doing on a daily basis. One of my biggest concerns about taking up a master's program was at the time that I started, I had, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and was working full time. And so I was trying to think about how can I, align this program, how can I make the most use of my time and align this program, the program that I choose, so closely to my work that potentially I could create opportunities for overlap of, doing things that I would need to do at work for my master's program and vice versa. And so that was really something I was looking to do, and was able to do with this program. So I can report that it is possible. So that's how I ended up in the program. I'd say the highlights for me that really stick out are, things that have already been mentioned, but particularly the residency program. Again, as someone who was working and had small children, when I first heard about the residency, I was hesitant because I was looking for something that I could do completely remotely. And so I was a little bit worried about, taking that time away from my family and from work. But at the end, what I quickly realized was how valuable that experience was. And I actually can't imagine doing it, any other way. And because of the relationships that we were able to develop across our cohort, that really, I think, set us up for success throughout the rest of the program, because we had such a strong support network and support model in place. And I just really loved the discussions and, that happened in class. Hearing about people's really diverse experiences. We had people in all different kinds of roles from across higher education. So it really opened my eyes and exposed me to different parts of higher ed that I hadn't necessarily been a part of or heard about or had a chance to really think about. And so that was also really interesting. I think the other highlight was the direct alignment to my work. And so, that chance to see the learning in action, and to really, be in a meeting and think to myself, oh my goodness, this is an example that I just read about in my, readings last night for my course and things like that. Or this is an example that I can use in my paper that I'm writing or planning to write, coming up, things like that. So that was another highlight for me for sure.
That's so cool, Laura. Thank you. From being able to connect with folks who are interested in these programs, I think you hit the nail on the head with your experience, in that some people they're looking for, okay, I know where I want to go. What's going to help me get there? And they've been able to identify the Maheel program and the Mallet program as vehicles to help them get that end goal. And I'm so happy to hear that you had that interplay between your work and your school, and that made it doable and engaging. Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay, next we're moving on to, we have double Sean in the room. So Sean Hackett, did you want to go first?
So my experience differs a little bit than the others. I was working as a clinical coordinator, developing education and assessing competence. And as a paramedic, I could do that fairly effectively, relying on other subject matter experts, looking at the literature that was evolving, going to other PhD researchers that were out in the field to inform what I was doing in my practice. But that carries you only so far in two ways. One is that professionally, you're not going to get promoted or move up if you don't have the credentials. Secondly, there is a depth of understanding that you can't possess until you've done some of the formative work yourself. And so I was at that place where I was no longer advancing, and my performance was plateaued. And so I had just had my first son, so he was less than a year old. And I talked about it with my wife and decided, no, it's still a good time to go do this education rather than wait. And it was very doable. I enjoyed doing the program. It was interesting when you start doing learning in an online environment. It is a change if you're not used to doing that. And the fact that everybody who's online today managed to make this work is essentially exactly what you need to do to make this work. You plan out your time, you allot that time for when you need to learn. And if that means that you're watching this as a recording, then that's how you did it. That's how you made it work. And that's really how you get through it. And it helps a lot too in 2020 and beyond that learning how to teach it's necessary that you know how to do that in an online environment using technological tools. And so the Mallet program really is the ideal program for both learning in the environment that you are learning to teach in. And so that really is why I picked that program, and it was recommended to me by others that had graduated from that program. Now, interestingly enough, I had a second son, and he was born with a congenital heart condition, and I had to take a leave of absence from school. And Royal Roads and the staff in the Mallet program and my supervisor, Elizabeth, were amazing. They were fantastic. I was supported all the way through so that when I was ready to come back, I could pick it up and carry on. And I completed a thesis, and one that I'm very proud of. So I think if people are on the fence and they're wondering, is this the right program for me? Is it doable? It's really, it's up to you how you do it. But if you're here making this work, then you can make it work.
Thanks so much, Sean, and for really drilling down on the right word is escaping me, but the flexibility that the learning is asynchronous, that we all want to be there live, but you may watch a recording once in a while to make it work. So thanks for highlighting that. So we'll go over to Sean Doyle next. Sean, did you want to tell us about how you ended up in your program and some highlights?
I feel like I'm the cleanup guy here. I'm going to touch on what everybody else has already said, and just that I'd been teaching for a few years, and a full-time position had come open, but to be considered, I needed a master's. And similar to Christy and Laura, I had a few colleagues that were graduates or current students that raved about it, and also having a full-time job. I was limited to a fully online program, which the MALAT does have an option for. So that's how I ended up picking that program. Highlights for me as well, to echo what Sean said, tremendous support from Royal Roads, Elizabeth specifically, and the wonderful people there through the process, and also the diversity as well, not just in the higher ed, but in primary, secondary, people that do corporate instruction and technologies, medical, military, some people work for the military. So all those considerations and lenses that help me relook at teaching as a exchange of information and that process to really open up my mind to what the learning experience is, as well as what the teaching experience is.
Thanks so much, Sean, and for highlighting that you are part of the fully online program. Given the pandemic that we're currently facing, that may be the reality for learners for this next bit here. So if folks online have any questions about what online learning is like, or an online residency, things like that, these are the people to be asking. So feel free to pop it in the chat box. And Steve, thank you for so patiently waiting. We love to hear from you.
Lena. Yeah, I will echo again what a lot of the panelists have already said for us. And you know, for me, similarly, the attraction of this program, I did look at a number of programs and really knew I was at a place where, as you've heard from others too, I wanted to grow in my leadership skill set. And I wanted to be able to kind of better understand, you know, the breadth of what higher education is. And really truthfully in that, I think I underestimated how much this Mahil program would prepare me for that, because it was such a great look at kind of the cross section of issues and trends affecting higher education today and moving forward. For me as well, you know, the module structure really fit family life and full-time work. The blended program really allowed me to have the connection with peers that I wanted, even more so than I expected. And that was fantastic. There was also a really nice kind of structure and predictability to our coursework at Royal Roads that I found kind of made it easier on me as a learner. Like, I think they've done a lot to attempt to accommodate, as you're hearing already, you know, you as the learner and what's going to work for you and what your needs are and how you're going to juggle that all of us, you know, had at the time. Highlights for me in terms of the experience, absolutely that peer learning and, you know, the networking and the kind of professional growth that's come as a result of that was huge. The immersion, you know, I think Brad talked a little bit about kind of literature and being consumed in literature. Christy mentioned it too. You know, I was surprised at how much, you know, Royal Roads was able to nurture that ability to analyze and synthesize a lot of information, and you'll be pleased at you know, the results. A lot of us spoke to kind of the pride in what we were able to produce as a result of kind of those culminating works. And then similarly, as you heard again, the application, you know, I as well very much benefited from being able to do project work within each course that was very related to the work I was doing and the types of issues, you know, either I was wrestling with as a leader or my unit, my team was wrestling with during the program. So lots of good stuff.
Thanks so much, Steve. And, you know, drilling down that a program like Mahil that's focused on folks who are in higher education, that, you know, that can sometimes sound niche, but the classrooms, you know, you're hard pressed to find someone with the same job as you. I think you spoke so beautifully to the diversity within the Mahil program and everyone else within the Mahil and MALAT programs as well. So you have talked a little bit about already how these programs impacted you professionally, you know, a lot of it through your learning at the time being so applicable. But if you don't mind, let's go back one more time and let's drill down on that a little bit. So how did having this credential or the learning that came from obtaining this credential impact your professional and personal opportunities? You know, let's have a little fun and let's go opposite alphabetical order this time. So Steve, I'll throw it back to you.
Lena, you know, one of the comments I recall making to our cohort kind of as we wrap things up in our final residency was about confidence. And I think a lot of us had spoken to the confidence we felt about, you know, who we were within the organizations we were a part of. And for me, that was very much part of the story was, you know, having been kind of an informal leader early on and having moved through a few different positions over the 2-year span, you know, largely because my institution, the leaders I was working with identified kind of the potential and the aptitude, the interest in me. I definitely felt like I was able to grow in my confidence to really sit at almost any table in the institution and really engage in any conversation in the institution, feeling like I had something to offer, but also you know, a preparedness to understand multiple perspectives and identify the multiple perspectives needed to effectively kind of address an issue and move forward on an issue. So that was huge for me.
Amazing. So confidence within yourself, but also the ability to take yourself further, but the people around you too. That's amazing. Thanks so much. Okay, let's do Sean Hackett this time. I'll make sure my opposite alphabetical order is in the right way.
I circumvented Sean Doyle again. Okay. I definitely probably had my, like, not that I did poorly in any class, but I probably had my worst mark in the actual pedagogy class, which is actually the one that I find I keep going back to and using the most now. So it actually has had the most benefit to me. And I think it doesn't matter who you are or where you're coming from, you're going to find in your program the aspects that are going to feed your passions. And for me, as I went through, there were so many different aspects of the science of learning, and the different technologies and techniques, and just the depth of learning that you get from a master's degree. There's so many things you can explore. And for me, it really gave me a new lens at how I was doing things that I had already been doing for some time. And so now I was seeing it in a new light. And it has opened up a tremendous amount of opportunities for me. I am redesigning the critical care paramedic program for Ontario, which is going to really be setting the stage for what is the competency framework for a critical care paramedic for Canada, which is not something I had set out to do, but something that I learned how to do through doing my program. And more importantly, I learned how to go beyond what I was being taught. So my program didn't just teach me like, here's the things you need to remember, here's the things you need to do. It actually taught me, here's how you can learn more, here's how you can understand more. And so by doing that, I've gone in new directions of education that I didn't foresee, that weren't part of my program, but that the program did set me up to be successful in.
Thanks so much, Sean. Oh, I wrote down that not set out to do, but learned how to do. I think that so perfectly summarizes the experience. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Sean Doyle.
Similarly, from previous speakers, for myself as well, was a confidence and that exploration that I did not come from an academic or scientific background. So as an instructor, it was kind of my best guess and intuition, and suffering from crippling imposter syndrome. So being in the program gave me confidence, not just from having, you've got the piece of paper, but the depth, or exploring in depth the facets and aspects, and saying, oh, that thing I was trying, there's actually a word for that, and there's a field of study for that, and here's the best way to do that, and here's what other people have found that went down that similar road. And so I found that tremendously validating, even if it's just like, oh, okay, it's way down there, but you're on the right road. So that was a great validation for me, but also picking up the little snippets of the other various OGs and fields of study to bring new lenses to my classroom, specifically looking at cognitive load and doing a deeper dive into that and reshaping the delivery, the content, the order, and certainly with the online delivery, with that cognitive load understanding in the back of my mind, it's really shaped my having to shift to the online delivery as well. So it's been paying off tenfold.
Thanks, Sean. And a big thank you again for putting words to what so many people experience, imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh. I'm sure everyone on this call in some fashion at some point while thinking of these programs thought, oh, me? Oh, really? So thank you for just calling it out for what it is and how you were able to move past that. That's wonderful.
Thank you. When I first started teaching, the news came on, and the headline was, a teacher in Toronto was an imposter was discovered teaching in Toronto. I said to my wife, I can't look. Please tell me it's not me. I can't look. So I'm going to sense I'm not the only one to feel that way.
Oh, that's too funny. They found me. Okay, so Laura, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah. I would really echo what Steve said in terms of confidence and feeling like you can own a spot at any table across the institution. I definitely echo that sentiment. The other thing that I really noticed was a huge shift in confidence and a huge, actually, just general improvement in my communication and particularly writing my writing abilities, I guess. I've always considered myself a strong communicator, but going through this program, really, I really see it reflected in just how I compose an email, or how confident I feel about pulling together a business case for, my boss, or thinking about what is a lit review, and how do you do it, and how do you pull one together. Like, those are all things that I would feel confident doing now that I wouldn't have necessarily before. And then just in the everyday, how I write email and how I compose an argument and all of those kinds of things, that's very applicable and very relevant in my day-to-day. And then I guess, when I was about a year and a half into the program, I did switch roles. And actually, my boss now told me that the reason that I was, considered for this role was because I was doing this program and I was almost done. And so I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not. And so that was clear. And to me, that really made it worthwhile, because this was the exact type of role that I was looking for when I set out to do this. So.
Amazing. Oh, thanks for sharing that, Laura, and for drilling down on the communication piece as well. You highlighted so many different ways that the development and communication penetrated your work. That's really cool. Thank you. I know I am writing an email. It sounds so easy, but there is such an art to it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, next, Christy, did you want to chat a little bit?
Sure. So I'm just kind of reflecting and listening to everyone, and it's all 100% applicable in my case too. I would say the work that I've done in this new job, first of all, I created my own job description, and then, hired into that position, very luckily. Some of them were biased, I guess. But I think some of the top skills that I took away from this program were the power of inquiry, and sometimes just sitting in a meeting and asking, evocative questions. That's really strong, right? Especially when you're not sure and you're developing new strategies for things like virtual health and the use of a virtual hospital, which has never been done in the province, right? The power of inquiry is really strong. And using that collective or collaborative action. I mean, BC has 8 different health authorities, and that can be extremely wasteful if you're not massively sharing and collaborating across networks. And so I've been really pushing in all of my, all of the opportunities that I have. I'm the co-chair for the provincial telehealth development community of practice. And so that allows a great format to share open educational resources and, create things with Creative Commons licenses, and share them right across the province and let everyone adapt them and not waste time, especially right now. We're moving so fast with COVID, right? Here's something I've built, off you go, run with it. And it doesn't need to be repeated. No one has time for, redoing work right now. So I think the power of networks, the power of collaborative action, and the power of inquiry are the 3 things I took away for sure.
Thanks so much, Christy. The power of inquiry. Oh, powerful. So, and we'll cap off this question with Brad. Over to you.
So it's kind of funny listening to the other presenters speak. I'm certainly not saving lives like Christy or Sean. I do numbers. But so in my Mahil cohort, I think there was about 15 of us that graduated. Of that group of 15, I think I'm the only one that hasn't gotten a new job since graduation or since entering into the program. So I'm the black sheep in that regard. But it still has a lot of value professionally. The examples I'm thinking of off the top of my head are like there's a project I'm working on at work where one of the things I want to emphasize was being able to check in with other institutions to see how they operate in this one domain. Before going into Mahil, I would have had no idea how to do that. I would have been essentially cold calling all the colleges and universities in Alberta. Instead, now I can just go and say, oh, hang on, I know people who work at these institutions. I can just call them. I can send them a Slack message, like we're buddies. One of the other things, I saw a question in the chat about how are there linkages between the coursework and your professional life. And I have a good example of that, which was I wrote a paper while I was in the Mahil program, which made an argument that online education should be a core element of curriculum development and course development in this day and age. And I wrote this back in like 2018, I think. Anyways, COVID happens. And I had conversations with members of Dean's Council and PEC, so President Executive Committee. And after we were forced into online learning and there wasn't really course development to support it, with some people, I sent them a copy of the paper and said, are you willing to listen to me now? So like the coursework and what's involved with the program, like if you work in higher ed, you're going to see ways it applies like super fast. And finally, the other example I can think of how it's benefited my life professionally. I mean, aside from the like I sometimes undeserved confidence I have going into sitting at tables and going into meetings where I probably shouldn't be there. One of the benefits I found is just I have a much larger body of knowledge, and I have a lot better context for how things operate. So whether it has been with meetings with the province, meetings with like chairs, deans, people from other institutions, I'm able to like better contextualize the environment in which we're operating. I'm able to better understand the perspective that they're probably looking at issues from. And like if I have one more meeting where I get an email after that says, oh, I'm amazed at how well read you are about this and how much you know about this topic, like I'm going to scream. Because like just having this better context about how others are looking at similar problems and similar issues, it just makes you so much more effective at working in those environments. And like I said at the top, I'm the only person in my cohort that, to the best of my knowledge, has not changed jobs since graduation. But part of that is because I had a job offer from someone who was in my cohort that I turned down. And also, I don't know if you follow the news, but it's not a great time to work in post-secondary in Alberta. So in a different time, in a different place, I remain confident I probably would have moved up the ladder by now.
Thanks so much, Brad. Hey, to any of those emails you get, just send them a link to the Mahil page. Just kidding. Well, I'm cognizant that we've reached 1 o'clock. So some folks may need to pop off, including our wonderful panelists. So anyone who needs to pop off, please do. We are recording the session and we'll make sure that the information we share in these next few minutes makes its way to you. So big thank you for joining us. But for those who are able to stick around, we'll take a quick peek in the chat box, because for those of us who've been had the ability to scroll through as everyone's been chatting, there's been some wonderful questions and dialogue happening there that I just want to read out to make sure that everyone is part of the conversation. So giving a quick peek to the chat box, we had some great questions around what does it mean to maybe start in the graduate diploma? Can you transfer into the MA? Should you? Is it appreciated? Should you just shoot for the MA or just wait? What does that mean? Lots of different ways that question was asked. And I actually want to point to a wonderful comment made by Steve in the chat box, who shared that he applied for the diploma and started with the graduate diploma, and by the end of the first 2 weeks was convinced that he was all in for the MA and that you could pull it off. So thanks so much, Steve, for sharing that. So for anyone who might be a bit nervous to jump into the MA, that's okay. That's why we have our graduate diplomas. And I'm hopeful and excited that you'll start the journey and you'll continue on to the MA. But if you don't, that's okay too. So that is a completion pathway indeed. We had another great question in here from Lori that our panelists touched on a lot of different ways already, but we had some pop in the chat box as well. So Lori had asked, when you were combining your work with your studies, was it obvious where you would place your focus? I'm struggling understanding how I might be able to apply this new education. So Christy had shared, no, sometimes you need to reflect and discuss with other learners to see the application. Sometimes it's like a giant light bulb. Tamara had shared that, the application is up to you. It tends to be because you're reading and engaged in discussion on current trends and issues. You're learning about things in real time that are relevant to your work. David shared that in his experience in Mahil, the linkages came pretty easily between work and school. We often had opportunity early on in courses to explore project and paper ideas and would work out with peers or instructors what the best connections may be. So thank you so much for that question, Lori. And then continuing on, we had lots of some fun banter in the chat. We had Christy sharing with Brad, who said, numbers save lives. We've hired a health economist in BC and are using machine learning to predict patient safety risks. Continuing on in the chat box, we have so many folks sharing that they did need to pop off at 1 o'clock, but many thank yous for everything that our panelists have shared so far. So with that, I'll leave the chat box to continue on, and we just have 2 quick slides we want to share to make sure that folks who are looking for more information on the programs have the right contact information about who they can talk to. So for folks who inquired about when are the upcoming intakes for these programs, they are listed on our website, but we wanted to make sure you had them at a glance here as well. So for the Master of Arts in Higher Education Administration Leadership, the Mahil program, our next intake is June 14th, 2021, putting the application deadline at March 14th, 2020. We also have our 2022 deadline posted as well. So if you're looking a bit further in advance, in 2022, you'll begin in June 13th, which will put the application deadline at March 13th, 2022. Looking at our MALAT program, the Master of Arts in Learning and Technology, that begins March 29th, 2021, putting its application deadline around the corner at December 29th, 2020. And again, if you're looking a bit further out, we do have our 2022 date posted as well. So March 28th, 2022, putting its application deadline at December 28th, 2021. So if you have any questions about any of these deadlines here, please connect with our offices, as we are so grateful to have a wonderful enrollment services team on our campus who are well versed in answering questions about these programs, but also any others on our campus as well. So you can join our enrollment advisors for a chat at learn.more@ruralroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, you can continue the conversation at learn.more.international@ruralroads.ca. And right now, they're able to communicate via email, phone, or set up Zoom chats, similar to this, to ensure all of your questions are answered. And with that, we have come to the end of our session today. Oh, it has been fun-filled. So I thank everyone who was able to join us live, everyone who is watching the recording. Wish all of you a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when and where you're watching this from. Bye, everyone.